Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Jackie Warburton from Terra Solaris. Jackie is a horticulturist, garden designer, and columnist for City News in Canberra. And she's also extremely passionate about what she does, which is very evident when you hear her talk, and made it a very enjoyable episode to record. I love how much she loves to learn within the industry as well. So even when she'd been in it for a little bit, she wanted to expand her skills and work on more design. And my favorite part about the chat was how she started maintaining a garden when she started out. And then more recently, she's working on a design to reinvigorate that garden after it was taken over by the government. So it's a pretty cool full circle moment there. And Jackie also makes a fair few great points in this chat, like staying in your lane and knowing when to say no to certain clients. So she said there's someone for every client. So if they want a certain thing that she doesn't do, then she's not the person for them. Some good points to take away, and it's good just to talk to a passionate person. So hopefully you enjoy the chat with Jackie Warburton. Well, Jackie, thank you for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
Look, I think I've always loved plants. My grandfather grew a vegetable garden, the very cliche thing. And my family weren't really gardeners, but as in my late teens, I enjoyed gardening and flowers. And I had my daughter at 19, so I was quite young when I had her. And then I really became passionate about gardening while she was young. And then, over the years, sort of decided to learn more about it, and then and go to TAFE, and sort of it went from there.
Did your grandfather grow his veggies in the ground?
Yeah. So he was, almost like not a market gardener, but that was exactly what they did. It was, he was from the war times. That's just what you did.
Mm.
So I can always remember, calling out to Pop in the veg patch and that sort of stuff. So yeah, no, I really enjoyed sort of the younger years of that, but it was never. I never grew up in a nursery or anything like that. I've just always had a passion for plants and gardens and cactus. For some reason, I've just had this fascination with cactus, and I think that was the basis of it. I thought, well, I love these things; they're fascinating. I want to learn more about them, and in many ways, that's sort of been the direction of my career in many ways, and I've enjoyed it because it's a passion. If you're passionate about something, it gets me out of bed every day. I get excited to go and have a look outside. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I think liking an unusual collection of plants was really where it sort of all started. Yeah. So
Yeah, there's a lot of things where I like, and if I sort of try and nail down why I like it, it's because they're unusual.
yep,
Because so you're not seeing things, it's not just something, it's not your box standard thing that everyone has. So
yep.
yeah, there's a lot of different succulents that are pretty unique and hard.
Yeah, yep, yep, I agree. I totally love them. They're just the flowers. There's so many good things about them. They're really terrific. The only thing you can't do is put a flower in a vase of flowers. So,
Ah,
but yeah, look, I love them nonetheless, and I'm forever learning about them, and they're just a fabulous group of plants that you learn from.
have you been to Cactus Country in
Oh, yes,
Victoria?
I have. Yeah. I was pretty excited to go down there. Of course, I was naive and went down in January and it was stinking hot. But yeah, that was pretty amazing to see 6 acres, under what the guys have done down there. And look, there's some pretty amazing places like Romana Nursery, which is down your way.
Yep.
Lyle, what he's done there is pretty spectacular. But being a part of the cactus community in Australia, there's been conferences every 12 months for the last 35 years, and it's a get together of people that are like-minded, and we meet in each different state, so you get to go and have a look at other people's collections and buy plants, and learn to shake the fire ants off the plants you buy in Queensland to put in your suitcase, and you get to learn really cool things, and and to hear lectures from other people that have experienced habitat walking or anything like that. So it's been a really awesome network of people. So every second year, an international speaker will come out, and those conferences are slightly bigger, and they're either called a cacticon or a succulenticon, and they're pretty cool. But again, the same sort of theme. So, and I think the Australian Cactus Society are nearly 100 in a couple of years' time. So that's going to be a really big do in Melbourne. So
Sure.
yeah, so so look out for that. There'll be a big conference down there that they're starting to organise now.
Yeah, right. So when you said you studied at TAFE, what did you study there to start with?
I was just a certificate 3 in horticulture, and then I think I went through to level 4 and level 5. Certificate 3 was your basic to get into parks and gardens and the basics, but 4 and 5 was more the management side of things and more management of people as well as more so the production side of things. So I did that part-time while I was working for a company called Canberra Sand and Gravel, and so it was a really good experience working with materials and landscapers and tradies and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, I found the going to TAFE fantastic. So it was quite hard towards the end of it because the TAFE had moved from Western in the ACT to a new building on the other side of town. So my 4th year, I was doing night classes, and the library had moved, the canteen had moved. So you'd, after a full day of work, you'd get to class, and the buildings are empty, and you just sort of struggled through. But once I finished there, then the TAFE system moved over to Bruce, and joined the rest of the CIT. So it was quite disappointing because the CIT at Western had been there since the 70s, and the grounds were horticultural grounds. And so the students learnt doing all the exfoliating of the fruit trees and all of that sort of stuff. Whereas when it moved to Bruce, the there was no outdoors, it was all indoors. And so it lost that connectivity of learning on the grounds. And but fortunately, the particular grounds are now run by volunteers called Featherston Gardens, and so there's a working bee once a month to renew the gardens and that sort of stuff. So they're still keeping those old trees and those special things that were propagated many years ago still alive. So fortunately, that organisation is still doing that, and I do try my best to get there, when I can, but I sort of have a rule. I want one day off a week. When I don't work a Saturday, I'm quite happy to go there on a Sunday, but not very often I have a Saturday off. So I'd love to do everything, but you've got to minimise and prioritise, what you can fit your time into doing.
Yeah. And the CIT, that's the Canberra Institute of Technology, so that's where people do take.
Yeah, look, Canberra's very funny. They don't like to be like anybody else. They just like to do everything different, and they rename everything. It's like when a new government comes in, and they all rename everything. So the ACT, it used to be ACT TAFE in the 80s, and then of course, they want to reinvent the wheel and spend more money and change everything. So, but so the TAFE system or the CIT system is still there. Landscape design is no longer taught, or they're at the moment struggling to get the module passed or assessed, or whatever the bureaucrats do with the modelling. You know what it's like with all the organisations. They seem to have to reset their scheduled programs like every 5 years. So if you're a student that's a little bit slower to get through the system, you tend to be possibly cut off at the end of it because you're no longer part of that module, and the new modules have come in, and
Yeah.
and I think that's Australia wide, and I struggled with that when I did landscape design online with New South Wales TAFE, and I just basically ran out of time and couldn't finish it because there was no longer an online availability. So they just said, "Oh, sorry about that, but you can come to ride TAFE every Tuesday if you like." And I'm like, "Well, that's not really possible." So yeah, I think the whole education system is struggling Australia wide in whatever level, and university and TAFE and CIT. So I think the internet has a lot to do with that. Everybody can learn from podcasts, from YouTube, all of that sort of stuff. And now AI will be able to design your house in 12 months' time, So it's hard. And I think we're just going to have to adjust and adapt to the future of how we educate people in our industry.
Yeah. Now, once you finished studying there, what was the next step after that?
When I finished studying at the CIT, I didn't do very much. I just worked really hard, and then I worked at a property called Huntley, and it was a historic property, and I was there from 2008 to 2011, and it was a 3.5 acre garden, and I managed it all on my own. We had plant fairs there, part of Open Gardens Australia, and there was a large bushfire that had gone through that property in 2003. So a lot of the garden had been redesigned and so forth. So I spent 3 years doing that, and then I left. But before that, I actually worked with Andrew, and that was with the lady that you had on recently, Shannon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I knew her face from somewhere, so I remember her. I'm talking probably 20 years ago, just when she was out of school. I remember she was just this crazy, passionate person that just couldn't sit still, And once I listened to your podcast, I went, "Oh, that's her! Oh my God, I'm glad she turned out well."
Yeah.
So Canberra's a small place. You still connect to people no matter what. But yeah, so I worked with Andrew as well, and then I worked for myself. So, and then I think that was from 2011. The job wasn't going particularly well with, bullying and whatever. And I left, and I had a garden club come to visit the gardens that week. And I said, "This is my last week. If anybody wants some gardening done, give me a call." And I finished at Huntley on the Friday, and I had two jobs on the Monday. And to be honest, I have never ever had a day off since then. It's just been a ride. It's just been amazing, and I just started with two jobs a day, and then my husband was working as an electrician doing solar panel work, and then the government pulled the solar panel rebate. So I was on my own for about 6 months, and I said, "Well, you're not going to sit at home. Come to work and help me prune some hedges." And 15 years later, that's exactly what we're doing, and we absolutely love the work-life balance, and so he's an electrician by trade, and he doesn't do any electrical work because the government charges, and your license fees, and the government keep changing the rules, and it's like anything in business. You've got to stick to your own lane, and while he can do it, then you've got to have rolls of cable, then you've got to have the ability and the time to do that, and then you need a 100 meter roll of cable to get 5 meters of what you need, and the storage, and so we just decided not to do anything, and because otherwise the clients get excited and want you to rewire their garden, but that's not what we do. We do garden maintenance, so we really try to stick to our lane. So he's very, very good at doing the hedging and a lot more ladder work than I do. But so, there's always been the quip that he's the perspiration, I'm the inspiration, the clients love that. And he's not a horticulturalist at all. He's not interested in plants. Some little old lady will talk to him about something, and he'll just put the hand up and go, "No, talk to her. I'm just here to do balls and squares," and that's it. He's just really happy with that. And so we've both got our own roles, and I do the paperwork, the communication with the clients, and the demographics of our clients are generally older people, and they really appreciate you turning up. I don't have cups of tea because I talk too much, and I just would never get any work done. So, I love COVID because it was like you waved to me from the kitchen window and I can get work done. It was fantastic. But they love that, and I love that too. So, that's really important to build that relationship with the clients that you do have. But I'm very strict with my relationships because there is an exchange of money. I'm very mindful of that, and that I'm on the clock, and I can stand here all day and chat with you, but you must know that I'm on the clock, and they're quite good with that. But I'm not friends with any of my clients on Facebook or anything like that, and I really try to keep that professionalism, because I think that's important, because not that if anything goes sour, but I just think it's integrity, and it's much easier for separation if there needs to be in the future for whatever reason, you know. So it's something that I do stand by, and I think it works quite well. So
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because I hear a lot of people who have got these regular maintenance projects and they have good relationships with their clients,
Yeah.
but yeah, you don't have to be best friends with them just because you work
No,
for them.
no, that's right. Look, I mean, I'll get, bottles of wine and chocolates or presents from when they're overseas. That's really lovely, and I appreciate that. And, I might take a potted plant to a client or something, but in general, I'm very mindful of that. And I think that's very important that, to do. But because it's my workplace too. And so I find that if you start crossing that line, the expectations get a little bit harder and higher, and then they call you on a Sunday and all of that sort of stuff, and that's like, no, 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 that's not good, So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's I think that's important. But I mean, I'll move with clients to new houses, or I will stay with the old garden. It just really depends, and I'll stay with the garden if I like the garden. It has to be interesting and stimulating for me. It's not just a mow and blow job for me at all. I need the horticultural pruning, or the wisterias to prune, or the fruit trees, or the spraying, or intricate sort of stuff. But it's my workplace, so the relationship has to be reciprocal. They need me, I don't need them. I know that sounds a bit, sort of an arrogant attitude in many ways, but I think you have to believe in yourself, and the work still keeps coming through, and there's a good match for everybody. And sometimes, I've got clients that don't like certain tools to be used and want everything pruned by hand. Well, that's not me. I'm here to do, work smarter, not harder. And if, the way I do things is not right, well, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that. You'll find somebody, and so will I. So I gain more clients every year that I lose, and the problem with that is I'm getting older and slower, and it's not really working. So I'm really cautious on what I take on now, because it has to fit me mentally and physically. Because yeah, as you start to get a bit older, yeah, your body just doesn't bounce back as quick. You can do the work, you can flog yourself hard, but that doesn't help you for the next 3 days to get over it. So
Mm.
I'm really starting to feel that now. So, it's hard.
Yeah, preaching to the converted here. I'm certainly well aware. Like I can do all the work and get heaps of work done in a day and think, oh yeah, I've had a great day, but that can slow you down for 2 weeks because you
Yeah,
push yourself
yeah.
too hard, whereas you're better off. It's like the tortoise and the hare race.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no, that's exactly right. So we just like to pace ourselves, and we have 2 jobs in the morning, we have lunch, and we have 2 jobs in the afternoon. That's a perfect day for us. We may go to the tip, because the green waste is free to drop off in Canberra, and that's anywhere within about 45 minutes to get to the green waste. So you might go to the tip 3 times a day, and that'll throw your day out, because you've got to add that 45 minutes to get to the tip and back again, or whatever. So some days you never really know what's going to be thrown up at you, because somebody might want a tree chopped down, or you fill the trailer really quickly, or you take a load of mulch. So it's variable. We just do so many different things, and Canberra's environment is really awesome for that. We really do have the 4 seasons, and so the autumnal color is just beautiful. So it's raking up all the leaves now, and then winter is the fruit trees and the roses and the wisterias, and the sort of the big hack winter jobs that you can do. And then the springtime is just nuts. It's just crazy. It's just anything. You know what springtime's like, and the Christmas rush. And we take a month off in January, so we don't work at all in January. It's too hot to go to work. Well, and from our point of view, the hedges aren't growing. There's not a lot of maintenance to do, so you can get in the truck, and you can put your work boots on and travel to all around your clients and have a nice chat. but that doesn't bring the money in. So what's the point in putting your boots on? You can give them a call on the phone if you need to, or let them know that you're still in town. If there's an emergency, let us know and we'll come by, you know. So, and I do have two government contracts that I do. So, you know, we make sure we do them, and you know, we'll occasionally do a couple of mowing jobs over the holidays, you know, because they're our regular clients in their 90s, you know, we're not going to, you know, not make them do it. So, you know, when you own your own business, you never have time off, you know. The only time I have time off is when I'm interstate or overseas, you know, because you're constantly looking at emails, or you're replying to text messages, or you know, it's never ending when you own your own business.
So are you at your limit now in terms of like if someone rings up saying I'd like you to start looking after our garden, you'd say I haven't got any room for it?
Well, I'll go and have a look, because I can never say no, and I never know what opportunities come by, or you know, it might be something that I can help with. But I mean, if it's what I call a polish a turd job, I won't do it. Like, I'm not ripping out ivy. I'm too old for that. I'm not going to get behind a matic and rip stuff out. There's young fellas for that, you know, and so I really try to suss out the horticultural things that they require from me first, and that's where I sort of vet my work from there, you know. I do a lot of horticultural consultations on weekends, and so that's just an hour that I spend with people in their garden, and then I find out what's a weed, what's good, what's bad, what's nearly dead, any issues with, for example, silver birches, or if they've got some tree issues, pest and disease issues. I'm very clued on with all of that sort of stuff. So and then we just go through a discussion of some design ideas. So it's not it's them getting information out of me how to manage their own garden or look after it, or how to make it less maintenance intensive, and so, you know, by giving them clients plant choices of hedges that only grow 2 meters tall, or, you know, instead of putting a photinia in a space that only goes 50 centimeters wide, you know. So I arm people with the information of where to best buy, you know, materials and products and things like that. So I do probably two of them every weekend, and so, you know, they're good money, and so I'm not physically working hard on that as well. So, but yeah, so they're good, and then I do the design work as well. So after about 2016, 2017, I sort of figured I was starting to get, you know, get on in age, and I really love this industry, and I wanted to learn how to do landscape design work. So I thought, oh, well, if I go to university part-time, 1 day a week, by the time I'm 50, I'll have a degree, and, you know, I'll be able to slowly transition into less physical work. So that was the plan. And then the university system was falling apart at that stage. They didn't have accreditation for the course. The senior lecturer quit on the day. It was just terrible. And then COVID hit, and they didn't understand what it was. And so I did 3.5 years at university, and did landscape architecture, and absolutely loved it. I have a passion for learning, and so it didn't matter what I was learning. It was fantastic. But I wanted to learn AutoCAD. I wanted to learn the nuts and bolts of design. I understand that the ideology of design and theory, but there was just too many units that were all about cultural studies. And so when I said, well, where's my AutoCAD class? And they said, oh, you have to go to TAFE for that. And I said, but I'm paying all this money to go to university to become a landscape architect. I didn't really understand, you know, and I was just devastated with the system that there was no horticulture taught in and so biology was taught. So I learned how to dissect a cane toad, but there was no plants knowledge. There was absolutely zero plant knowledge. And so I was just illusioned with the system, to be honest. So And then COVID hit, and then we had some personal issues with in-laws and elderly in-laws in old houses in interstate, and try to deal with elderly people in nursing homes and COVID and interstate houses. I just couldn't do it all. Plus run a business, and then the university, sort of kept changing the times. And while I was going to uni, it was a set day. I had staff. And then they changed the day. I'm going, no, I've got staff booked. You can't do this to me. They just, yeah. So it maybe just didn't suit me at the time. But I was just disillusioned. I spent a lot of money, and I got a lot from it. But I did get a ticket in a diploma in design, but I didn't get the landscape architecture, because then you have to, after you've done your your design, you then have to go work for another firm for 12 to 18 months to get more accreditation. Well, I run my own business. I don't have time to do that. And so I think I didn't really understand the criteria that was required at the very beginning, or whether that wasn't clearly written or understood. And I just want to do design work to complement my horticultural knowledge, not go work in a big firm. That wasn't my sort of ethos with it all. So after I was disillusioned with that, I then went to the New South Wales TAFE system, because they provided an online course. And then I didn't finish. That, but I did. And the teachers, they just disappeared. The New South Wales TAFE system was struggling with teachers. So I don't think it's just any state. I think it's over the board, having to get consistency in good quality teaching, yeah, in any of the levels. So, but after 7 years of doing classes of some sort, I've had enough, and I really feel like I've learned enough, and I have a really good sound knowledge base of where I'm going. And I did some work for a landscape company for about a year, and I did all of that. And so now I'm chugging away at doing some design work on my own, and fitting that in with working 6 days a week. So I'm not sure where I'm fitting it in, but it's fitting in. So
And you mentioned
yeah.
there were times where you had staff, you had to, work around with the course. So have you got any staff on at the moment other than your husband?
No. My son helps us periodically, or when he needs money, he comes and helps. But generally, no. We just found staff really difficult. Not only from the tax system. You've got all your liabilities you've got to pay. It just became too complicated, and then you've got to try and find extra work for them. And then if it rains, what do you do? And it takes a lot of business money to have extra staff, because if you have extra staff, then you need an extra vehicle, then you need an extra mower, then you need an extra two blowers, and then it becomes more of a paperwork nightmare. And the clients don't want to see my staff members. They want to see me. They've employed me for who I am. And we sort of found that even when Brett would turn up with one of the other staff people. Oh, well, where's Jackie? Oh my God, you can't do that. You're not a horticulturalist, so the clients want me there. So and I think a lot of people do expand and then put staff on, and that's and it's and how do you charge a client? Because you've got to charge your staff a decent wage, but you can't go pull weeds for three people for $210 an hour, So it's hard. So businesses have to suck up a lot of income to have extra staff, and we just didn't want to go down that road. We sort of tried it a little bit, and and then if you expand and they don't turn up, then I'm working really hard on a Sunday to try and please the customers that I have let down, because somebody else has let me down. And I just couldn't be bothered. It's too complicated.
Yeah.
And then the tax system, and all of that is just too much.
Yeah. Work cover as well. Continue, it goes up
Yeah,
all the time.
yeah, yeah. I'm just not interested in the paperwork and the bureaucracy that goes with it all, and it takes me away from what I enjoy doing the most, and that's just talking to the clients and just plodding through the day doing some jobs that I enjoy doing, and not dealing with the stress of people not turning up. Yeah.
Yep. And with the consults you were talking about that you do a couple a week, where do those do all your leads come just from word of mouth, or do you do advertising?
Yeah, pretty much word of mouth. I think there was one street in Canberra. I think we did 6 clients. We started on one end of the street one morning and finished at the other end. Look, it is word of mouth, absolutely. But in 2015, I did build a website to do treatments for elm leaf beetle because a friend of mine who is a manager of a nursery here just sort of said, "Oh, this is a real problem we've got here. We had it since 2010, and he said do some research and whatever." And I thought, oh, okay, well, I should get a website together. And I think I paid $600 for the website, and I think I made that in the first consultation. But I just found there wasn't a lot of people that advertised for horticultural services, and Canberra's full of public servants that sit on the internet all day, so it was great. That's probably where I got a lot of that from. But it certainly is word of mouth. I mean, I've got clients where I've worked for all three of their children, or their sister down the road, or whatever. So quite often I will say to somebody, if they ask me if I've got any openings, I'll say, well, just do some name dropping and then I'll think about it. So it's the connectivity to other people as well, because you know that they're a good egg, and you don't you don't have to try and build all of those relationships. And so I'm quite happy with a lot of the clients that we do have, because I know them, I know their gardens, and I know they pay, all of that sort of stuff. And so I would rather have a little bit more space in my diary to have a client that hasn't rung me for 2 or 3 years that wants a bit of work. Yeah, sure, no worries, I'll come and do it. You don't have to reset up those relationships or the paperwork to go with it, hope that they pay. And the job just ended up being a lot simpler and a lot quicker because you know them. It's great to see them. They ask you how your son is. I mean, all my clients know my son more than more than he thinks, because you chat with them. So I do take on new clients, but like, it's I think about it quite a bit, because it's generally a long-term relationship that I'm always looking for. It's not just a quick one-off gardening job that I tend to do.
Yep. And are you using battery equipment or still on petrol?
I'm on battery for the secateurs because my old hands are getting really, really sore. The secateurs, and I've got the chainsaw with it as well, the little handheld chainsaw. That's the duck's guts. I love that. I love tools. So yeah, that's my favourite. They're really great for fruit trees, and because I tend to prefer to be a climber, I prefer to climb a tree to prune it than to use a ladder. I do use ladder work, but yeah, it's definitely the battery. That the snippers is fantastic. I mean, it'll snip your finger off. Don't you worry about that. So the batteries don't last long enough because, of course, it's always the battery runs out when you're on the highest branch, and you've got to climb down, and so I do prefer petrol, but I can't go past that, the handheld tools at the moment. But we do have the hedge machine and the chainsaw on the pole with the extension. I don't use the extension. That's too much for me, and I know my limits, and so I can use the hedger with just the standard bar and the chainsaw, but and do that. But Brett does most of the ladder work. I do some of it, but if he's carrying injuries, well then I'll take over for a bit. Or if I'm carrying injuries, he takes over. So at the moment, I've got a sore shoulder and he's got a sore elbow. So usually we carry injuries towards the end of the year. It's not like us to get injuries this time of year. So we just need to change what we do for a bit, and slow down, and it happens. It happens.
Yep.
Lots of physio cream. I think physio cream works. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, we sort of put that on in the mornings, but yeah, it's good.
And what brands are the battery tools that you use?
A still, yeah, I like all the stills. Yeah, I've just always used still. I think I've had still blowers. The only thing I have is the four-stroke Honda whippersnipper. I think I've had two of them in 15 years, and I don't mind them. So, but I mean, the only mowing we do is just hand mowing. We did at a time get a ride-on lawnmower, but then it became false economy because you had the trailer, you had to drive home with an empty trailer and then load the machine on and then go do the job, which took you 40 minutes, and then you had to go home, drop the machine off and get to the, so it took an hour and a half to do a 40-minute job, and it just again, we kept learning over the years just to stick to your own lane and stick to the work that you do and try not to do it. So yeah, we got rid of the ride-on mower and just decided that actually mowing really wasn't what we sort of wanted to do. And if we just stick to what we do, then we'll be more efficient in doing it and be better set up overall.
Yep. Are you doing many designs as part of your projects?
Yeah, I am. I've got four going at the moment. One of them is
Right.
for a client that I've been gardening for 15 odd years, and so we're redesigning her garden. I'm doing Huntley, the property that I spoke about that I went to. Yeah, I'm doing a government contract with them, which is a whole nother story. So I'm doing a design for that. Yeah, so I've got, and then I've got another two urban designs that I'm doing, and I've just finished one that I planted out myself. So I really wanted to do that to challenge myself in the interpretation of my design to see if Brett and now the people that were working that day could interpret what I was doing, and I wanted to see whether I got my measurements right, and I learned a lot from that. So not to put too many trees in the corner, for example, like just so I found that a very good learning process to go from the design process to actually the implementation to really make sure that you've got your spacings right and things. So I mean, the other thing that also keeps me in business, is landscapers that are so quick to get a job done and move on that I find after a landscape job has been done for 3 years, the plants haven't moved or the soil preparation hasn't been done. So from a horticultural point of view, they'll come and contact me and go, well, why isn't it growing? And you'll dig up the plants and have a look that the prep hasn't been done or it's the wrong plant for the wrong spot or that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think that also comes back to the education of landscapers. They like the plants, but I think by the time the plants come around in the project, they're just ready to move on and get to the next one because there's so much work around. It's quite hard. So and a lot of poor plant choices really that I tend to find that won't work here or the wrong size plants really. That's really, it's all and I find it very interesting from my point of view. When I go do a design, the first thing I think about is the maintenance because that's what I've always done. And so, why would you have a 2 meter wide hedge? How in the hell are you going to prune that? So and so from a design point of view, I find it very interesting because from a designer, I need to extract information from the client to what I can do best for them. But as a horticulturalist, they need to extract the most information out of me to suit their garden. So I I'm struggling and I'm learning how to transition the way you would conduct a consultation, whether it be a horticultural consultation or a design consultation, and where to say something and where not to, and how to extract. So yeah, so being a design consultation is a completely different concept of a horticultural consultation. So that can be quite hard for me to work out and try to think, well, I'm not the one doing the maintenance. I'm not the one, because I'll think, well, how am I going to build that wall? But I don't have to do that as a designer, whereas as a horticulturalist and the gardener, I have to think of that. So it's really quite hard in my mind to get excited. I do get excited, but then I find it very hard to pare back and focus for me and the client to get the best outcome.
Yeah, I think it's great when you can be a lot more involved than just doing the design and implement it like you did when you did the one you were planning out.
Yeah, I
Because you make
really enjoyed
changes
that. Yeah.
when you're looking at something on site, it's easy to make changes that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you're doing the design.
Yep, yeah, no. So I really enjoyed that. Not that I want to do too many of them because it's hard work. I do some big planting jobs like it might be like a thousand plants in a an industrial site or something like that. And we've got an auger that a 200 mil auger that we use for that. But I don't want machinery any bigger than that because I can't say no, and I just end up doing stuff that's out of our depth and takes us longer, and then I'm not necessarily the one on the machine. Brett is, and then and then I get into trouble. So again, we stick to softscape, and I think that's the best way to explain it to people that get somebody to do all the hardscape you like, but we don't fix concrete. We don't do anything like that. So we just stick to the softscape.
And what sort of program are you using to present your designs? Like, did you learn CAD?
Yeah, CAD over time. I would like to learn Vectorworks and a few other things, but I just don't think I have the mental capacity to try and learn something new at the moment. I'd rather just get really, really good at what I'm doing, and my designs are quite clear and basic, and they're not tricky or high end. They're just your suburban garden design. So I'm happy to do that and then do land FX and put that into the system and make a simple less is more. So it make a really elegant line drawing opposed to sort of too much information. So maybe one day I might learn Vectorworks or something, but really at the moment I'm just happy with AutoCAD, and that does what I need it to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've spoken to you briefly at the garden show this year. So how
Yep.
do you come down there every year?
No. I went down this year for the landscape design conference that Fleur Flannery was organising, and she is an amazing person and an amazing conference that she organised. And I'd never really been around Melbourne, so we got an opportunity to go to Macedon, and have a look at some really beautiful gardens up there. And a couple of days of conference, and I think the conference finished on the Monday, and the Melbourne show opened on the Wednesday, and I just said, "Oh, this is impossible. I'm not going home when it's so close." So I stayed for a couple of more days, and then I went home on the Thursday. So I still, yeah, and then so I got a media pass, so I was pretty happy with that because of the writing that I do. And then I ended up organising a an interview on ABC that weekend with Paul Pritchard from the ABC radio in Canberra. So it all fell into place really, and I just fill in on the radio from time to time, and I had 2 weeks to fill in after I'd got back. So they just sort of said, "Oh, how's Melbourne?" I said, "Fantastic. I can organise an interview," and it just sort of went from there. So I was really appreciative. The people at Melbourne Flower Show were just really accommodating, and we managed to get Paul on the radio, and his garden was just amazing. They all were, I know, and they're a lot of work and a lot of effort, and yeah, so yeah, no, it was pretty cool. So it was my second time I've been, and I think I'll probably go more often now. Yeah.
And what's the writing that you do that you mentioned?
Yeah, so I do an article every week for City News magazine, and so that's the publication. 70,000 publications go out every week, and it's also online. And so it's just two photos, and then I write about the plants that are in those photos, and maybe 350 words of what to do in the garden at the moment. And so I've been doing that for 3.5, 4 years, I think. And so it's quite a challenge because you writer's block and all of that sort of stuff. But I tend to, if I'm going to do any of my writing, I like to do it all at once, so it's sort of in my head, and I can tend to focus on things 100% if I just pick up one project at a time instead of multitasking, and I write 4 weeks at a time, and then I'll send them all off, and then I'll have a week or two break, and then I'll do it another 4 or 5 or whatever. So it's money. It's another finger in another pie, I think, and I love it. And I get lots of feedback. I get I get lots of fan mail, which is really cool, and I get little old ladies all tell me about their streptocarpus that they've had or something, you know. So look, I do get some emails from eco warriors and keyboard warriors and stuff like that, but I love it. I think that's all positive stuff, and if that gets somebody, talking to me, well then that's fine. Everybody's got their own opinion. They might think that, that people don't like cactus. Well, I do, but that's your opinion, and yeah, so sometimes somebody will go, "Oh, that's a weed in the bush." Well, yeah, I'm sorry about that, but it's pretty in my garden and I like it. So yeah, but that's okay. It's all engaging, communications, and yeah. So there's a really good crossover of media, with the radio that I do as well, and the articles. That's a lot of people that it covers. So I really enjoy writing them. It's and I learn from them as well. So and my articles start from photos that I've taken, and generally because I'm writing a month ahead of myself, I look at photos I've taken this time last year, and then I will then go, oh well, that's a pretty autumn color. So then I'll write about autumn colors or do some research, or if I've got a photo of a bag moth or something, I'll think, right, and then I've got to learn what a bag moth is and write about that. So I'm always learning by what the photos that I take as well. So yeah, I love it. So it's been a couple of years, and it's just part of my daily routine now that I do.
Yeah, no wonder you're flat out, like you said, with no spare days.
No, I don't have any spare days, but when you're passionate, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter, because that's just what I do. Like I went to see a client yesterday, but then I just said, oh, well, there's an open garden over there, and I'll go and see that, and then I'll go and see these people, and I'll do that, and I'll have a look at these flowers, and so it's in your blood, it's in your veins, and you just it's I don't know street names. I just know, oh, you turn at that tree, that red tree down there, or you do, I think if you're passionate about something, you never work a day in your life. I know that's always been a cliche, but I truly believe that, so I
Uh,
love what I do. Yeah.
I'm pretty passionate about landscaping, but I work. But
Yeah, yeah,
some days
yeah.
you don't want to do certain things.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's just the part and parcel of it all. But I think horticulture always changes for me because, I'll be passionate about cactus, and then I'll get excited about all my indoor plants for a while, and then now I like carnivorous plants again. So I'll just go buy a bunch of them, and then they'll die, and then I'll go on to something else. So I just think it's one of those industries where you're forever learning, and you're forever changing what you're looking at, and I love learning about biophilic gardens and xeriscape gardens, and so that's just my latest thing. So you're always learning. You're always learning.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's you're bound to find something that you enjoy as well. It's like there's so
Yep.
many different genres of plants. So
Yep.
you might
Yep.
like tropical or native or cactus or biophilic
Yep.
plants or rooftop gardens or yeah,
Yep.
the list is endless. Do you ever look forward to like plans that you're going to do within the business? Like, do you forward plan like 5 years in advance or anything that you work towards?
Well, at the moment we've got a couple of big government contracts, and so once they run out, we probably wouldn't fill those days, and then hopefully there'll be enough money in the kitty to do a transition to retirement, or still work a couple of days a week, and do that. I could never imagine myself retiring completely. I mean,
That was
technically
going to
I've
be my
still
next
got,
question, whether you could
yeah.
stop doing it.
Well, I mean, I'm passionate about it. I think I could also. That's why I really was wanting to do the drawing side of things. So while I may not be putting my boots on and mowing somebody's lawn or doing, pruning some fruit trees or something, at least I can still be earning some money indoors, and doing things that aren't as physical. So, I mean, I've still got technically another 15 years of income working. So that's why I sort of set it up this way. So then I could still stay in the industry, and still do what I do, and still earn an income. But I think, it'd always be lovely to retire and travel, but that's still travel to, you know, Patagonia or Chile to have a look at cactus, so it's all still relative, it's still in my veins no matter what. So I think I would really struggle to retire completely.
Yeah, but and that's also a good thing as well that you don't hate your job so much that you can't wait to finish it. You just
Yeah,
enjoy
well,
it.
yeah. I mean, I just found a hobby, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
how do I get paid for this hobby? And that's really what it became. So it's if it's still bringing money in, and I'm still happy doing it, well, then that's it. And I think most people, when they decide to retire, they just decide that day, that weekend, I've had enough, I'm done, and maybe that'll happen. But right now, I'm still passionate about what I'm doing, and the plants are kind to me. People can't be kind, but plants are, so that's pretty awesome, you know. Yeah, so plants are very good for your mind as well, you know. So if you're going through a rough trot, it's always good to spend time in your own garden and grow your own vegetables and you know all of that sort of stuff. So I think horticulture will always be around, even if I'm not working it as an income. I'll still be growing vegetables, or you know, cleaning out my cactus garden, or you know, buying more conifers, or you know, like it's always going to be there in my life,
Yeah.
always.
What would be your career highlight to this point?
I think planting a tree with the Governor General, Quentin Bryce, a couple of years ago. Yeah, we planted a stone pine out at a historic property called Lanyon Homestead. So it just was sheer luck. We just happened to be organising something on my birthday, and the lady who was organising it said, "Well, happy birthday, Jackie, in you go," and that was it. But so yeah, that was really cool. And I worked doing a big body corporate company where when Malcolm Turnbull came into prime ministership, so making sure the gardens were really neat and tidy there was pretty cool. So Canberra, as I said, Canberra's a very unique place with politicians and the parliamentary triangle. It's really unique, and I think it's quite unusual for a lot of people around the country. Public service is very different here. 70% of Canberrans are public servants, and they're on really good income. So the cost of living is not affected in the ACT. There is a lot of money around. There really is a big divide, you know, financially, and tradies charge a lot as well. So we've known in the past that it's cheaper for companies to hire tradies to come down for Sydney for a week and
Mhm.
hire a house and get them going. It's just the way it is, and just there's a lot of money here. There
Yeah.
really is a lot of money, and so we could never move our business anywhere else. You know, we thought about moving to Tassie a few years ago, and you know we thought that'd be great, but you know it's just not the reality to be able to move your business and take the income that you get and the reputation that you've built over 15 years. That takes a lot of effort and connections and that sort of stuff. So I just don't think I could mentally be prepared to start again almost, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And with the when you did that planting with the Governor General, did you have one of those shiny spades, like a brand new?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it was really good. It was so funny. Like I was so scared to even touch the spade with her. It was like, oh my God, it was like a fan moment, big time. But yeah, no, that was really cool. So yeah, and the tree's still there. I went and had a look at it the other day. So, but you know, I've had some pretty incredible clients as well. So you know, it's just it's been lovely, and the property Huntley that's really been a career highlight, and I'm now back there after 15 years. So the gentleman who owned the property, he passed away in 2016, and then the government bought it after that. And then so long story short, I basically got the contract to rejuvenate the gardens because in about 6 years where it had gone to ruins, and I was the only one with several hundred photos of the gardens in their prime 15 years ago. I just had no idea how valuable all of those photos would be. And so I'm working, I've had that particular contract for 6 months. So um, the house is just covered in ivy and covered in privets. And so we're and blackberry and all sorts of things. So we're hacking our way into that and preserving what's already there. We're doing propagation on the camellias that are already there and documenting what is there and what's left, because we've had a lot of rain on the eastern coast, and there's been a lot of damage to the property, and there's been a lot of trees that have fallen down, so it's really not safe. And so at the moment it's going to take us a couple of years to really bring it back, and so I'm documenting it along the way, and so I will end up doing a plan of what is there, and then also a plan of what was there, and then try to put them together, and hopefully there'll be funding at the end of it all to be able to reinstate that. So I'm excited because I get to plant privets and cotoneasters and all those really naughty things that people hate, but it's part of the historical significance of the property. So it's hard work. So yeah, it's a really lovely property. So that's a full circle for me. So that's
I
pretty
love that.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been really cool. So we just go out there. Nobody lives there, and I guess that's the disappointing thing with a lot of the historic properties is that they're not lived in. So the possums get in, the foxes get in, the rats get in, and then people start stealing things from the property, and so it's disappointing that's the avenue that the government take to preserve the property, but properties need to be lived in to keep them preserved, and so it's an interesting conundrum, I guess. But I also look after another property called Horse Park, and that's from 1830, so that's a slub hut property, and I just look after the gardens there as well. So I'll finish that contract at the end of next year, and so we just maintain that, and so the privet hedges and cotoneaster hedges are all still there, but we make sure we prune them so they don't flower. So if they don't flower, they're not going to set seed.
No, right.
So yeah, so and then we had an arborist that decided to come in and chop some trees down because that saved him some time from coming back next time. But it was a historic property, mate. And he goes, "Oh, they're only box elders," and I was like, "Yeah, well." So in the end, we replaced the box elders, but we replaced them with flamingo, which is a sterile variety. So it's about educating and changing that if we do change a species in a historic garden, there's got to be a reason for it, or putting things in. So silver birches might be really difficult to replant. So we might need to come up with a different option to silver birches, or try a hardier species like Jack Montii or something, or we go with a ginkgo biloba lemon spire, which will give you the same look but a different plant that will last longer. So they're the challenges that we're coming up with at the moment. So
Mm.
yeah, I'm having fun with the report writing, and putting the old photos together with what we've done and how we're cleaning it up, and the knowledge that I'm finding at the historic libraries, and the historic organisations around Canberra, and what information they have on those. So I've naturally fallen into looking after historic properties, and there's 7 or 8 that I've worked on, and yeah, so it's really exciting how your career just goes the way it goes. I think you say no to nothing, and you just see what happens.
Yeah. Last question for you, Jackie, is who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
Oh, look, Jonathan Garner. He is an awesome guy. He is the managing organizer for Behind Mayfield Gardens. So he's done a lot of work up there. He worked at Government House, and he implemented a beautiful waratah garden there, because there was no waratahs in the New South Wales government house, and so he made sure he put one in there, and the story behind how he did that was amazing. So he's an inspiration to the industry. He's full of life. He's been a wonderful mentor to me. But definitely, I think yeah, Jonathan Garner, definitely.
All right. Yeah, well, I'll definitely see if we can get him on. But thank you so much for coming on. Absolutely love chatting to you, and it's just fascinating to hear what you're doing. And I loved how you've gone from place you were initially looking at, maintaining, and now you're helping redesign and bring back to his life. So it
Yeah,
was awesome.
excellent.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, okay, bye.